So let's move into the area of dementia. As noted before, in the new DSM-5, the categories for dementia are now listed, are going to be listed, proposed to be listed as major or minor neurocognitive disorders with specific dementia types. This is a great source if you want to go to the website and learn more about it. On the left is a healthy brain. On the right is a brain that has been riddled with amyloid plaques and neurofibrillary tangles. This is something that I was forced to learn in grad school, and our teacher had us repeat it 10 times until we were all sick of repeating it, but we all got it in our brains. That's what happens when people get dementia. So let's talk about the different types of dementia, okay? Cortical dementias are your classic type of dementia, and the number one known cortical dementia is Alzheimer's dementia. The classic symptoms of this dementia are memory problems and issues in a different area of functioning, agnosias, apraxias, ataxias, agraphias, but also problems in reasoning and problem solving, expression, and agitation. Cortical dementias account for 60 to 70% of all known dementias. Okay. And here's some neuroimaging of what a normal brain on a SPECT scan looks like and a brain that has Alzheimer's. 20% of people with Alzheimer's dementia show physical aggression, and the research is showing that those people who are becoming more physically aggressive often have had a history of violence or physical aggression earlier on in their lives. If you have someone who comes in and tells you everything's fine and nothing's wrong, and no, they're not having any memory problems, but they don't really talk very much, you might be seeing a dementia presentation because they might be having word finding problems. Okay, the newest research is showing that it is not so much the loss of content, it's not the loss of memory, but the inability to process, breakdown, if you will, and being able to process. So it's not problems in storage, it's problems in processing information. The newest research, Koenig, I believe is in my references, is showing that individuals with Alzheimer's are often able to retain the ability to form new semantic memories when using simple automatic processes. So they might struggle with a complex rule, but they're not going to struggle with very simplified rules. Testing with cortical dementia. The things that you're going to see if you have someone who has a cortical dementia, assuming malingering levels of effort and everything else aside, if you have these findings, you might have someone with a cortical dementia. Visual spatial impairment, as evidenced on the ray or block design. Executive functioning problems. You give them the clocks test, and they have problems with planning. You remember seeing that one. The ray complex figure drawing also, they might take a stimulus-bound approach to it, which would suggest executive functioning deficits. Trails B is a good one because that looks at cognitive flexibility and the ability to shift sets. Perseveration. Perseveration and being stimulus-bound on Trails B would be that they just go to the next dot in line as opposed to going 1A, 2B, 3C. Wisconsin card sort is a good one as well, and then they might show apraxias, which we've already talked about. All right, so vascular dementia. I want to draw your attention to the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke Association. So the NINDS, you can just Google NIN, or you can actually type in National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke Association. There's a lot of really great information about that, about dementia in that website. And they actually have a breakdown of how to diagnose vascular dementia, because there's been a lot of argument over vascular dementia, does it really exist, what sort of criteria go into diagnosing it? And the answer is yes. It's a stepwise progression, and it's due to several mini strokes. It's also known as multi-infarct. So I believe the the ICD-10 still refers to it as multi-infarct dementia, and I only infer that because all of the new psychiatrists that are at San Quentin refer to it as multi-infarct, so I think that that's what they're being taught. But it is due to changes in blood vessels and multiple strokes. Its onset is much earlier than Alzheimer's disease, and they're more likely to see depression, affective lability, palsy, gait disturbances, that sort of thing with the vascular dementia. It's really cardiovascular, cerebral vascular diseases that we will see, and accounts for 30% of dementias. And frontal temporal dementia. This is actually becoming one of my favorite types of dementias to actually do testing with, if one can actually say that PC-like. I don't know if I can. So you see people with frontal temporal dementia as having aggression. They become socially inappropriate. They might be apathetic. They don't show motivation or spontaneity anymore. It accounts for less than 5% of the dementias, but someone was asking about cortical dementia. Well, frontal temporal dementia would be considered cortical dementia. And it's earlier onset with rapid course. An example is Pick's disease. Patients with orbital frontal dysfunction who might have the frontal temporal dementia, they show aggressive behavior, socially inappropriate, and they may start stealing things. This is particularly bad in nursing homes or residential care facilities. They have dorsal media and dorsal lateral frontal dysfunction and may demonstrate a lack of concern for other people. And they might also show eating behaviors such as having a pathological sweet tooth. It's okay. Right? I just threw that on the floor. Now, people with Pick's disease. Pick's disease used to be thought of as the only frontal temporal dementia, but Pick's disease is really due to marked Pick's bodies, which are rounded microscopic structures with ineffective cells. So it's no longer the neurofibrillary tangles and amyloid plaques so much as these Pick bodies on the cells that cause the neurons to swell and take on a balloon-like shape, which then accounts for the deterioration and the change in personality. There's a decline at home, work, apathy, disinterest in sexual activity or other activities they used to be interested in. And at later stages, they might show problems with language or be unusually quiet. These people can take on gluttonous eating activities, just eat everything in sight. It begins after age 40 and is less common after age 60. And Pick's disease specifically accounts for only 1 to 5% of dementias. But Pick's disease is one specific disorder under frontal temporal dementias, under cortical dementias, if you will. And people can be diagnosed with a frontal temporal dementia. Specifically, I had a gentleman who had been drinking for a long, long time, did not have memory disturbances, but had disturbances in pretty much everything else. He was apathetic, he was sexually inappropriate, and he had a lot of different problems. His, I shouldn't say I didn't have problems with memory. His short-term memory was intact. His long-term memory was impaired. So he wasn't picking up what people were putting down. He was able to kind of parrot back what he was hearing, but on delayed recall, and the next day he wasn't all there. He didn't remember it all. So he wasn't retaining information. More rapid course with the frontal temporal dementias, and as you can see with neuroimaging, you can actually see the changes in the frontal area. So subcortical dementia is really renowned for absence of aphasia, apraxia, and agnosia. So subcortical dementias are, you have slowed processing, information processing, disturbance of attention concentration, difficulty with memories with regard to retrieval, but that is partially alleviated by cueing. So those recognition words on the list recall, they would do better with the recognition piece, but the free recall they wouldn't. The most common is multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's disease, and motor symptoms are the most apparent with this type of disorder. The main focus is not so much on executive functioning, but multiple focal cognitive deficits. This one is also alcohol-induced, but that's a controversial finding because alcohol could be found in the frontal temporal, could be found everywhere. So anterior and retrograde memory problems, abstract problem solving, few naming deficits. It's less progressive over time than Alzheimer's dementia. You might have heard of Wernicke's or Korsakoff syndrome, or Wernicke's-Korsakoff type of dementia. That's due to a thiamine deficit. So chronic alcohol use causes dehydration, causes the thiamine deficits, and theoretically you can treat that with thiamine, which is great. Patients develop a kind of palsy or ataxia. Remember the problems with walking. They also have confusion, memory problems, personality change, irritability, disinhibition, apathy. So all of those are different things that could happen with a subcortical dementia. Now, subcortical dementia, and the main focus, I've already said that. These are some pictures of a subcortical dementia. Cortical being the top, subcortical being underneath the cortical. All right. Testing in subcortical dementia, you'll find more with information processing seen on Trails A, and speed of processing, so like the processing speed indexes, and gait because of the basal ganglia involvement. Now there's different types of dementia, such as like a static dementia, head injury, dementia due to traumatic brain injury. It means that it might not necessarily be progressive. They might have no memory now. They might have no ability to make new memories, or very, very impaired ability to make new memories. Might be aphasic or ataxic, but it's not getting worse. Whereas with Alzheimer's disease, any kind of cortical, it's going to be deteriorating. And substance-induced, same thing. Dementia screening, there's a great test out there, the Dementia Rating Scale. You might also have heard of it as the Mattis scale, because it was named after Stephen Mattis, PhD. It's for ages 56 and over, to age 105. And it measures cognitive functioning at lower ability levels where some other evaluation instruments are limited by floor effects. It's one of the things that it says. It incorporates 36 tasks and 32 different stimuli, yields 5 subscale scores, and looks at specifically attention, perseveration, initiation, construction, conceptualization, and memory. And it says it's really good for looking at cortical versus subcortical, which is nice. Also, the fold. You know, I actually put together a fold. A fold has some common objects, and they come in a bag. And the person has to describe what they're feeling. One might be a key, one might be a cup. I'm not sure what the other ones were. They describe what they're feeling, they pull it out, and then, from memory, they have to tell you what was in the bag at a delayed memory piece. I haven't actually purchased it, but it comes out time and again as a really good test for looking at people who might have a dementia. But what about this test? This is the Dempsey Test. You remember we were talking about what to use for mental status exam if it's not normed? Well, this is one of the tests that I was actually taught, and it's not actually a test at all, in my internship, or one of my practicums, I think. You know all of the, I don't know, how many people in here have credit cards? Many of you. How many of you get those horrible little blank checks from like Discover saying, please write a check that will cost you like your arm and your leg and maybe your left lung? Yeah, normally we just shred those bad boys, right? No longer. You can now use those in your testing. I have a little stack of them. I X'd out the bottom. They don't have your names on them because they're all blank. And then you could tell the person, please fill out the check, making it payable to PG&E for $49.50. It is due on the 15th of the month. See what they write. See if they write today's date, or if they write the 15th of the month when it's due. Usually the older people that we're dealing with have never dealt with online banking. All right? That's why you could still use this probably for the next 10 years. After that, you're on your own.